group is Learning Community 4, and this is our presentation to the local Chamber of Commerce on the incomplete GSP submission by the Central Kings GSA. As you may already know, California has experienced notable periods of drought over the past several decades. However, in the last few years, we've had levels of dryness not seen in over 100 years. The state has already made efforts to help mitigate these severe drought conditions, including creating the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA, in 2014. This act effectively created localized groundwater sustainability agencies, or GSAs, to help prevent overdraft of their assigned groundwater basins. It is important to note these GSAs are required to form a complete plan on how they will accomplish a task of managing their basins. This plan is called the Groundwater Sustainability Plan, or GSP, and it must be approved by the Department of Water Resources. Our concern is that the 2020 GSP submitted by the Central Kings GSA was issued an incomplete status by the Sustainable Groundwater Management Office. The SGM office has already provided Central Kings with a list of discrepancies and the corrective actions needed to bring the GSP into compliance. This was provided to Central Kings via memo. Our group has also contacted the Central Kings GSA to confirm if the noted corrective actions were taken and if they were effective enough to fix the issue. We haven't yet received a response from the Central Kings GSA, but implore their quick action, as GSP noncompliance may have a notable negative impact on those who reside and do business in the Kings Subbasin area. This could fuel negative repercussions for the GSA as well. We will be addressing the specific discrepancies, recommended corrective actions, and reasons on why the GSP must be corrected as soon as possible.
Now, let me explain to you all how these two deficiencies can affect every one of you in here. The first deficiency that we focus on is that the GSPs do not establish their minimum threshold in a manner consistent with SGMA and the GSP regulations. Specifically, the GSPs establish minimum thresholds that were decoupled from the subbasin's undesirable result definition and do not represent an actual threshold that, if exceeded, may cause an undesirable result. Groundwater extraction monitoring has become relevant when following water management practices. These water management practices come in the form of water use restrictions, the form of education, and metering services. It is important to establish minimum thresholds in order to avoid basin reaching and management levels. There are civil penalties that are given to anyone who consumes an excessive amount of groundwater beyond the authorized level. Moving on to another deficiency that we chose to focus on, the GSPs did not provide information related to how GSAs evaluate whether GSA actions which occur during GSP implementation are attributing to the degradation of groundwater quality, and whether the monitoring network can sufficiently determine the causes of future groundwater quality degradation. The CGSA fails to provide information on how actions attribute to the degradation of groundwater quality. You all need to be aware of what can help eliminate any possible contaminations in the water in order to prevent any waterborne diseases. Just think about it. The person next to you can have contaminated water that can get to you. We all need to develop a strategy that will help reduce further issues with the water quality.
Regarding the first deficiency, the GSP failed to set the GSA sustainable management criteria for chronic lowering of groundwater levels in a manner consistent with the requirements of SGMA and the GSP regulations. This deficiency can have a major impact on local homeowners and real estate developers that plan to build housing in the GSA's area. This is because the primary concern related to undesirable results for groundwater levels would be that groundwater levels will decline in dry periods to a point that they will not likely recover during the normal/wet periods. In addition, a significant and unreasonable number of shallow domestic wells will go dry. If there are not sufficient water levels, homeowners in the area will suffer because shallow wells are more susceptible to droughts than deeper wells. Moreover, homes require certain access to amount of potable water. If there is insufficient access to potable water in the GSA's areas, then real estate developers will also suffer and need to pivot and change their development plans for the area. This will cause real estate developers to have to figure a way to either change the size of their housing developments or find a way to recycle the little water that is available in the area. Both options will increase the cost of housing, however. An alternative to this that would solve many of the issues may be the use of a gray water system to recycle used water in the house. This would allow water from the washing machines to be recycled and reused for outdoor irrigation lines. It's a very cost-effective method for houses in areas that experience frequent droughts. When looking at a marketing approach to this issue, the biggest concern is unreasonable number of shallow domestic wells to go dry. A simple countermeasure could be for real estate developers to have their homes in GSA's areas built with gray water systems prior to potential homeowners moving in. By having a recycled and self-contained water system within a development or within a house, potential homeowners would have less to worry about and less to worry about low groundwater levels and dry shallow domestic wells. Though some relatively cost-effective countermeasures may exist, the extra hassles that homeowners and real estate developers might face may make it hard to market living in the GSA's area. Regarding the second deficiency, there's potential for contamination to reach levels deemed harmful to human health and the environment. This could have a negative impact on the local economy due to multiple factors, including increased hospital visits and damage to food crops. A substantial amount of groundwater is used for agricultural purposes in the King Basin area, so it is imperative that the water remain at an acceptable level of quality. Otherwise, there's risk that biological and chemical contaminants will slow growth, damage/alter the physical appearance, and even cause death to food crops. This will not only affect consumers, but also the farmers who grow these crops and rely on them to earn a living.
Okay, so before we got started with our recommendations, we wanted to familiarize ourselves fully with the keywords that are used all throughout the GSP. We knew that there were many laws, regulations, and due processes that are going to be involved in the GSP, and we wanted to know the background information on this before giving a proper recommendation. So the first major component of our research was the California Water Board, which oversees the protection of the environment, public health, and all the beneficial uses by preserving, improving, and restoring the water quality in California, as well as drinking water. We learned that there are multiple statutory water rights that define exact meanings for the terms used throughout the GSPs. Along with this, we learned that there is a water code that mentions the process and the steps when adopting a plan such as this one. And we all know that over the past several decades, groundwater quality and levels have substantially decreased throughout the San Joaquin Valley. Extreme groundwater extractions in nearby GSAs have always had an impact on this. And our second source, which has previously conducted a remote sensing study, mentions that if groundwater levels gradually kept falling, the land in the valley will continue to sink for the next several decades. And to stop the sinking, the water levels need to rise again to normal levels. And now we know that deficiency 1 and 4 has to do with establishing a minimum threshold and then being able to measure that threshold, as well as figuring out the future water quality and the reasons behind the degradation. And these are all key steps to figure out before a proper GSP can be established and implemented.
First recommendation was made due to the inconsistency of the GSP minimum thresholds and the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, as well as GSP regulations, without having a thorough understanding of the undesirable effects on its beneficial uses and users or adequate sustainable management criteria in place. Local farmers and their contracts could be left in a precarious situation. The Central Kings GSP is essentially the same area as the Consolidated Irrigation District, who has surface water rights to the flow of the Kings River and storage rights in the Pine Flat Reservoir. Surface water irrigation must be supplemented with groundwater to meet the annual water demands of the crops. Discharge of contracts from local farmers could occur due to impossibility. Without proper groundwater supplementation to facilitate irrigation, this could lead farmers to contract non-performance, leaving them liable for damages. They are also susceptible to non-performance through impracticability, where performance is possible but commercially impractical due to drastic increase in costs of finding alternative water sources. Now, as it pertains to having an inadequate groundwater quality monitoring network system, the Central King GSA could be susceptible to being viewed and tried as being a nuisance. As stated within the course textbook, a nuisance is a non-trespassory interference with the use and enjoyment of real property. The focus of nuisance claims is on the plaintiff's harm, not on the degree of the defendant's fault. Therefore, even innocent behavior by a defendant may be at the basis for a claim, if that behavior resulted in unreasonable and substantial interference with the use and enjoyment of the plaintiff's property. Central Kings can be tried as a public and a private nuisance. Public nuisance being an unreasonable and substantial interference with the public health, safety, peace, comfort, convenience, or the use of land. Private nuisance is the interference with an individual's use and enjoyment of his or her land. Now, in my report, I'll have supplemental research and elaborate more on these details and how they're more legal implications of the GSA's actions.